Hilchis par Adumah Perik Shnei Moser. Otam Shenitma B'mes, V'hiza Olav, Yekivin Shenoga Kolshu, Mimei Nida, B'chol Mokim, Me'er Psari Shel Tomei, also Le'azoya. Any place where the main leader touches of his skin is Beseder. Afilu Nafla Azoy al Reish Etzboi, on the tip of his finger, al Reish Svasei, the tip of his lip, is also, it's all, also Le'tfila. Aval, Im Noga Bil Shene, if it touched his tongue, is Eina Klum. Aval Pisha Aloshin is Evarim Shebigoli Li'in Tumek Meshebiyarna. So we learned before that there's Evarim Shebeseser, so over there is Takanat Mekabel Tumah. In other words, if you put in something tummy with a kush into the throat, for example, we learned, so it's not Mekabel Tumah because it's not Evarim Shebigoli. Masha'inkin, if it touches the tongue, it is Mekabel Tumah because the tongue has a din of Kabbalah's Tumah. It's considered Evarim Shebigoli. So here the Chiddush is, and that's how the Gemara learns out from Psukim, that if Legabi Kabbalah's Tumah, a tongue is considered from the Evarim Shebigoli, it's Mekabel Tumah. But Legabi Hazoya, the tongue is not, you can't make the Hazoya on the tongue. In other words, if a person has his mouth open or his tongue is sticking out, and the Mechatos touches the tongue, so it's lay also lay tefillah. Aval bisha aloshin kevarim shebigolu liyan tuma, kimesha biyarnu, or be'ena kevarim shebigolu liyan hazo utfila. As far as hazo is concerned, the hazo can't touch the tongue. Now, as tefillah is concerned, the water doesn't have to touch the tongue. The mouth can be closed, and nevertheless, the tefillah was also lay tefillah. V'chein keli shnitma b'mes, and v'hiza olav is kivin she'igia legufa shel keli kolshu mimei anida. There's no shear as long as the most minimal amount touched this keli is also the azor. So the azor was a good azor. Halacha beis shnei kelim is shnei bnei adam shenischaven lahazis al shneim keachas. And we learned before you can make azor. The Rambam said even on 100 people you can have azor and a lot of people together. And lepel v'hiza alechet, the hazor landed on one of them. And the water dripped from the first to the second. So the din is Harei Hasheni b'tumasi. The second one is still tummy. Why? The water has to come from the maza. Over here, the maza, the marshal, there's two people. There's Reuven and Shimon. The maza, it came onto Reuven, and from Reuven it came onto Shimon. It didn't come from the maza onto Shimon. And since it didn't come from the maza onto Shimon, it went onto Reuven. From Reuven, it was the tamtzis was on the sheni. Therefore, it's not a proper azor. He's al shnei kelim, and v'nistapiglei im he's al shneim kiachod a michavein nimtza olav. In other words, he doesn't know how it worked. That it was actually land directly from him on both, or the pale it landed on one, and from one it fell on the other. So the din is again hazuyasi psula. The azor is possible, and even though it's a suffix, so we say misafik hamid al cheskosei, and it's becheskas tomei, and memela. It's not, you aren't considered that it had an azoya. That's the halacha gimel. Machat shenesuna lacheres. When you have a machat on cheres, v'hiza olah, and you were maza on the machat, and lepel the machat got wet from the azor. A besofik ala machat is that the azor went directly on the maza. Sofik min acheres nimtza olah. There's a suffix that came from the cheres. Is azoyosip psula. The azoy is possible, which is bepashtus the same halacha like we had in halacha beis. Now the Ma'aseh the Rambam brings from the Feres Yisrael, from the Rashash, that there's two dinim over here. There's one din that the hazoya has to land on the item that's tummy, on the person that's tummy, on the item that's tummy, mikoyach hamaza. That's number one. It has to land on him, mikoyach hamaza. So if, let's say, it lands on one thing, and then it drips from that one thing onto the other thing, so since it didn't land on the second thing, mikoyach hamaza, so there was no hazoya. That's din number one. Then there's another din, that once this water, this mechatos, was used for hazor, so the mele was like nasis mitzvasei, and therefore it no longer has a din of mechatos. The din of mechatos is until it was used for hazor. But once it was used for hazor, so then it no longer has a din of mechatos. So the mele is azeh. When a person sprinkles on one person, and from that one person it falls onto the other person, even if it fell onto the other person, mikeach of the hazor, in other words, the person was mazeh b'keach, and as a result of that, some of the mechatos fell on Reuven, and then it bounced off on Shimon from the keach of the hazor of the mazah. But nevertheless, since it already fell on Reuven, and Memele was already nasis mitzvasi, it was already affected the tara of Reuven, so therefore it passes and it doesn't go on Shimon. Now, what happens if you would be maza on Shimon? But Lepel, you'll be maza, you didn't hit Shimon, you hit the wall, and then from the wall it jumped off onto Shimon. So then the Hazor would be a good Hazor, because Lepel, even though the Hazor didn't go directly onto Shimon, but it came to Shimon through the koyach of the maza. And Lepel, it wasn't a nasis mitzvasi because it fell on the wall. And since it fell on the wall, so there was no mitzvasi over here, there was no Hazor, so the Hazor is good. So in other words, we're saying that there could be two reasons why the Hazor is no good when it goes from one to the other. Could be one reason is because the Hazor wasn't Mikeach HaMaza. That's one reason. And then there could be another reason is because the Hazor already affected a Tara. And since it affected a Tara, so therefore it's not going to be able to affect another Tara. So Mela comes out that in this case, Halacha Gimel, where we're talking about a Machach and the Sunnah al-Cheres, so over there the Cheres is no affecting of a Tara. A Cheres is not Mekabel, can't be an Eifon of a Tmei Mez that needs Azor Shlishi Ushvi. There's no Musik of Azor Shlishi Ushvi by a Cheres. So over here, the problem is only going to be because it dripped off. So that's the din of Halacha Gimel. Halacha Gimel is because since it's a suffix, whether it came directly on the Machat or it dripped down from the Cheres, so that's a suffix, therefore it's tummy. In the case before, by Halacha Beis, over there, even though Ba'amas the Lashon over there is, Hari Hasheni b'tumasi Hashiplu Hamayim Olav Mahazoyes Hamaz Alim and Atamtzes. So it sounds again that the problem, the Rambam doesn't mention the din of Nasus Mitzvasi. But L'chur over there could also be a problem of Nasus Mitzvasi. Ba'amas Tzarech Bir, the Rambam in Halacha Beis doesn't mention anything about Nasus Mitzvasi. Later on in Perek Tezvav, he's going to mention that something that already affected Tara has a din, doesn't have a din of mechatas anymore, has a din of nasis mitzvasi. I'll call upon him b'kitzer. We have two situations. We have a situation where he's maza on something which needs a Tara, and from there it goes on to this other person, the other thing or person that needs a Tara. That's one situation. And then you have a situation where he's maza on something that doesn't need a Tara, and then from there it goes on to something that does need a Tara. So we're saying that l'chura, which should come out, even though in Rambam it's not so clearly meduyik, it should come out that if he sprinkled it in a way that it mikoyach hazor, it fell on the other person, so even though it didn't come onto the other person directly, so then it depends if the first thing that it fell on needs a tara or not. If the first thing that it fell on needs a tara, so then there's a psul of nasis mitzvah say, so even if he did b'koyach, well, still the second one won't be Torah, won't have a din azor. Masha'inkin, if the first one didn't need a tara, it jumped off from a wall, it jumped off from a kli cheres, and then it fell on something that needs a hazor, so then the chsaron would only be if it just dripped down, and it wasn't mikeach hamaza. Masha'inkin, if it fell on it mikeach hamaza, so then it would be Torah. That's what we're saying, l'chura, that comes out based on what the Rambam brings from different achrenim. But in the Rambam was saying again, it's not so clear. This din doesn't say it in the din clearly. Halacha dalet. Kelim hamifutzalim, kelim that are made out of parts, shemechubarim zel lezeh b'masrim, that connected together with nails. Kigein maspeda shel prakim. You have a pair of scissors, which is connected with two parts, or the izmil shel rihitni ukietzmem, something which causes to smoothen wood, and it's also. There was two like pieces of wood that you connect together with a knife, with something to smoothen out the wood. I'll call upon them. You have two pieces of the kelim that are connected with and each one is like really a keli latzmei, but now they're working together and they're connected with a nail or something like that. Zazoi. Nachamol. Kelim hamefutzalim, kelim that are made out of parts, shemuchubarim zel lezeh b'masmerim, which are connected to each other with nails. Like a pair of scissors, or v'izmul shorehitni ukietzbam, which is also something that causes the plain wood to smoothen out wood. B'shas, so the din is azay. B'shas malacha, while they're doing the work, while they're functioning together, they're working together. These two pieces of this keli, you know, the scissors is working. Now that is the izmul shorehitni is working. So then, it's chibur l'tumah la'azoya. It's considered a chibur sai as far as tum is concerned, and sai as far as zoya is concerned, which the Rambam is going to tie choice. However, shalei b'shas malacha, if they're not functioning right now, they're just sitting there, they're together, but they're not actually doing any work. Is any chibur leila zeh v'leila zeh? Therefore, they're not considered not a chibur for tuma and not a chibur for azoya. Ketzah Ketzed in chibur l'tumah l'azoi. What does that mean? She'im nitma echad mem b'shas malacha is nitma sheni. Because while he's using these scissors, and a tumah touched one part of the scissors, so the other part of the scissors is also tummy. And then he's al echad mem b'shas malacha. And if while he's using the scissors, there was hazor done on one part of the scissors, is also hazor l'shneim. So both parts of the scissors become tar, or both of them have hazor. Or ki'ilohim guf echad, as if they wouldn't be two parts, as if they would be one. That's what it means, chibur b'shas malacha. Saila tumah and saila hazoya. In the case of Eini Chuber, Leila Tumah v'Leila Zoya, what does that mean? Shem nitma echad mem shalei b'shas malacha. They're just a pair of scissors lying, and a tumah touch one part of that scissors, is lei nitma chaveri, the other part of the scissors don't become tummy. So if you're going to separate the scissors, the part that touched the tumah is tummy, the parts that didn't touch the tumah is not tummy. Or even if you didn't separate it, the nitmu shneim, and if they both became tummy, now you have an entire scissors that were tummy. And then the hizal lechad mem shalei shras malacha. You had a hazoya on one part of the scissors, and it was shalei b'shas malacha. So the din is letir chaveri. The other part didn't become tur. Afal pishen mechubar. So the zeu din teira. That's the din menatera that b'shas malacha it's a chibur saila tumah and saila hazo, and shalei b'shas malacha it's not a chibur leila tumah v'leila hazo. Aval medivri sefer is gazru sheyichibul tumah afilu shalei b'shas malacha. So there was one gzeira, that are always im nitma echad mem tami chaveri. Even though meikra de dina minatera, it should only be b'shas malacha in nitma echad mem nitma chaveri. But nevertheless, midrabanan is nitma echad mem nitma chaveri even shalei b'shas malacha. That was one takon. And v'chein gazru aleim, there was another gzeira. Shalei yichibul azoya afilu b'shas malacha. Even though b'shas malacha the din is be'emes, that if you were hizal lechad mem, so the other one also becomes tar. But lepeil they made a takana that in gazralim shel yichibul azoya afilu b'shas malacha. Why? Because gzerim mishum shalei b'shas malacha. We're afraid if you're going to say the din is now b'shas malacha, so memela the din you'll think that the din is the same way shalei b'shas malacha, because you'll be mekel lekula shalei b'shas malacha that hazoya lechad mem shav hazoya lasheni. Now that is by tumah. We're afraid that if shlei b'shas malacha, you're going to say nitma echad mem lei nitma chaveri, the second one. So al derez you'll say b'shas malacha is also lei nitma. So that's this din. In other words, be'emes minatera, there's no such a thing that it's chibur l'tumah v'lei lazoya. It's either chibur l'tumah ulazoya, or it's not a chibur leila tumah v'lei lazoya. So minatera b'shas malacha, it's a chibur l'tumah ulazoya, and shlei b'shas malacha, it's not a chibur leila tumah v'lei lazoya. Mashenki midrabanan, there could be a mitzvah where it's chibur l'tumah, and it's not a chibur lazoy. It's not a chibur lazoy. Ula'elam im hizal lechad mem letir chaveri achi yazegam alav. That's midrabanan. You always have to have azoy on both. Is hine lamada. So may we understand. Shekol mokum shatu shemei. Whenever you hear there's such a mitzvah called chibur l'tumah ve'eni chibur lazoy, so ein zel gzeir midivreim ala derech shebiyarna, because be'etzem in atera it's either chibur l'tumah ulazoya, or it's any chibur leila tumah v'leila zoya. If you say it's chibur l'tumah v'leila zoya, means you're being machmer. You're being machmer that l'tumah is a chibur and lazoya is not a chibur. Halacha hey. Shnei kelim shechibur. That's talking about it's a kelim hamfutzalim. A pair of scissors. You have one side of the scissor, the other part of the scissors, and they're connected. But it's very clear that they're connected. However, shnei kelim shechibram achenasik guf echad. They no longer feel they connected, but they actually became one. You sew, a person sews two begadim or two curtains together, so they mamish become one. So then it's hareli chibur l'tumah lazom. Then it becomes a keli yachad mamish, and therefore it's not considered like keli mamfutzolim. Halacha vov. Shlal hakoifsim. When launderers, people that would wash people's clothes, and they'd want to make sure not to lose any of the clothes, so they would make a certain stitch, a very, very temporary stitch, to connect the clothes together. So there was a stitch that connected them, but on the other end, there was a very temporary stitch, because as soon as they're going to wash it and give it back, so that stitch will be taken out. Or v'habeget shutafer b'kalayim, you have a beget which was sewn together with kalayim, so obviously you have no intention of keeping that sewing together, and therefore v'hem oimdim latiran, they're both oimdim in order to take out the stitch. So the din is einan chibur azoy. As far as azoy is concerned, they're not a chibur, because they're not really connected. However, v'harein chibur l'tumah. But as far as tumah is concerned, they are a chibur. So it's again a situation where it's a chibur l'tumah and v'lei la'azoya, which is under the Rabbanan Dikadin, because under the Raisa Dikadin, it bechlal is not a chibur. V'chein hasalim shebekantel. If you have a salim, it's like you have two poles, and you connect to them salim, which is baskets. In order to be able to carry all the baskets together, you connect all these baskets to poles or to two poles. That's one situation where you have the salim are connected together. Or v'hamita shel tarbel. You have a bed. The bed was made for threshing purposes, and that bed was also like made. It was like planks of wood that were put together, and they were made. They were pieces of wood that were put together. That's hamita shel tarbel. They were made to thresh with. Or the keren shel kliva. Keren shel kliva refers to a bed. The keren shel kliva means one of the feet of the bed. Or the kanayim shel yetzi drachim. Kanayim shel yetzi drachim, people that travel, they want to have like a cup. They need a cup to drink, or a cup sometimes also to fill water from a well. And they don't want to carry large, and sometimes you'll need something large to be able to fill it from a well. So they have like little horns, and one horn into another, and each one has a hole on the bottom. And Memela, it becomes like one large cup. That's the karnayim shel yetzi drachim. You have little horns that you put one horn into the other, and then it becomes one large cup. Or v'shalsheles hamaftechas, some type of a chain that's made out of maftechas. It's made out of keys. Not sure exactly the tzir. So the din is again chibur l'tumah v'lei la'azoy. All these things are not really one. They're not really one. They're different pieces that are put together. So as far as tumah is concerned, they're considered a chibur, and therefore if one of them becomes tamei, if tumah touches one of them, all of them become tamei. However, if you're maza on one, when they're all tamei, if you're maza on one, then they don't be, it's not a hazoy on all of them. They have to be maza on each one separately. That's chibur l'tumah v'lei la'azoy l'tzorech sheyigu hamayim and hamaza b'chol sal v'sal. Each basket has to be touched with the mayim, with the mechatos which are being maza, and also b'chol mafteach u'mafteach. Each one of those mafteches, of those keys, or b'chol keren v'keren, each one of the horns, whether it's talking about the horn of the feet of the bed or the runners which you drink with, and also b'chol keren v'keren mita zu ha'mefutzalas. So we're talking about this mita which is used, a mita shel tarbel, which is used in order to thresh, which is made out of parts. So you have to have that if they become tamei, so you have to the mechatas has to touch each koira of this mita zu ha'mefutzalas. Halacha zayin hamachaber sholish ksosi shel tzemer. You have 3 blankets made out of wool, and you connect them. Or v'shei shel pishton. You have 6 of them that's made out of flax, of linen, and you connected them. V'shleishes dinim, or 3 sheets. V'shteim esrei mitpaches, or 3 like towels. Is all of these cases harei elu chibur l'tumah ul'hazo. So there, since they're connected and they're properly connected, so this amount is considered a normal amount to connect, and therefore they're considered a chibur l'tumah l'hazo. However, Yisrael came, if you connected more than 3 blankets of tzemer, or 6 of pishton, or 3 sheets, or 12 towels, if you connected more of them, so that's not really a proper connection. That's not normal to make such a large sheet or large blanket, etc. Is Yisrael came is therefore chibur l'tumah. As far as tumah is concerned, it's a chibur, and therefore if tumah touches any of it, so all of it becomes tamei. However, v'lei la'azoh, but as far as hazoh is concerned, since you connected more than the normal amount that's connected, and presumably it'll be disconnected at one point in time, so therefore it's not considered a chibur for hazoh. Now, cholek echad, one shirt, the talis achas is a talis, is like a beggar that surrounds you, or the kuluf kor nechad, which the Ram will soon touch up. So harein chibur l'tumah lahazoya, afilo hoya aruchen b'yesa irechav b'yesa. Whereas these things, if you have one shirt or one talis, there's no maximum size. And as we're saying, since it's one talis, it could be as long as it could be. Or it could be one shirt, it could be as long as it could be. In other words, you're not saying, just before we said that when you're connecting blankets together, you're connecting sheets together, so there's a maximum, what's considered a proper connection, that it should be a chibur l'tumah la'azoh. Masha'enkin, when we're dealing with something that was mechatchila one, you didn't connect, it was cholek echad, or as a talis echad, or kluf keren echad, So then there's no maximum size of it. It could be no matter how size, it'll still be considered one, and therefore it's considered one size as far as Tum is concerned, which is obvious, and also as far as Hazoya is concerned. That's what he's saying. No matter how big they are, it makes no difference. Now, what's Ve'ezu Klufkerim? What does Klufkerim mean? If you have two pieces of cloth, and you put like cotton in between, like we would call like a down material. And you sew it, and then it's something which keeps you warm, like a down material that keeps you warm. That's klufkerim. Halacha ches. Kisui hamecham shemechuber b'shalshelas. Hamecham is the samavar. That you have a cover to this mecham, and it's connected. The cover is connected to the actual mecham with a shalshelas. Is his ala mecham? If you make hazoya on the mecham, is torakel, because the kisui, which is connected with a shalshelas, is bottled to the mecham. However, he's ala kisui. If you make hazoya on top of the covering, so then litora mecham achiyazol. That doesn't cause tara to the mecham. Vice versa, it causes tara to the kisui, but it's not doesn't cause tara to the mecham. Halacha tes azug for inbol. If you have a bell, and in this bell you have a clapper, is chibur l'tuma le'azor. That's called the chibur l'tuma le'azor, and therefore v'mhizo alechad mem taru shneim. And obviously, if you touch one of them, so they both become tummy. Halacha yud hatvi. That's a keli shetovim beis hapishtim, which you use to spin flax, or you compose ropes. So this tvi is made up of three parts. Shleisha gufim yeshbei. There are three parts to a tvi. There's the eights, the piece of wood, shemalafim of ma'olav atovi, that you wrap around whatever you spun on it, either the rope or the flax. Buhu nikra kush, that's called the kush. And then there's v'hanuchoishes yarbarzel, shebereisha eitzazeh, the piece of metal. Buhu nikra tzinoira, that's called tzinoira. Sheboy poislum the toven, that's the metal which you use in order to spin the flax or to compose the ropes. That's second. And also v'harichayim shebe'emtza kush. There's like a ball in the middle of the kush which helps it balance. V'yanekras piko, and that ball that's like looks like a richayim. It's not. It looks like a mill which like sticks out of this kush. So that's called the piko. So again, so there's the stick, and then there's the which is called the kush, and then there's the tzinoira, and then there's the piko. Now hakush shepoisnu be'achavolim shenitma. Now we're talking. There's two things. There's what you make chavolim on, you compose ropes on, or you do flax. Now we're talking about the one that does the ropes. Hakush shepoisnu be'achavolim shenitma. So the din is leyaza ala pika shalei. Don't make the hazoya on the pika. On the pika is the ball in the middle. The ball in the middle. Uvulei ala kush, and also not on the kush, which is the stick. Ela ala tzineki, the hazoya should be on the piece of metal which is on top. V'mhizo alechad mishloshtam. However, if you were maza on any of all of three, is Torah kill. But lechatchila, the seder advarim is that the seder is that the azor should be on the tzinera. However, v'shel pishton. However, if the one that you make flax with is that's maza lechad mishloshtam lechatchila sheshloshtam kibur. So the one that you make flax with is mamish mechuber. So therefore, there's no lechatchila even that lechatchila should do on the tzinera. You could do on any of the three, either on the kush or on the pika or on the tzinera. Mashaying the one that you make ropes with, so lechatchila should do it on the tzinera. But with the evidence, if you did it on the other two, on the pika or on the kush, it's also b'sefer. Halacha yudalef oir shel arisa. You have like a crib, a bed, a small bed for a child. Shehu mechuber lepika. So you have the bed, the mattress is made out of leather, and it's connected lepika. It's like buttons. There's like loops at the end of these oiris, and they're connected to the pikas. So now they're connected to the entire bed. And the frame of the bed is connected to the oir. So the din is chibur l'tumah lahazor. So the oir together with the arisa, with the pikas, in other words, they're all connected. There is considered a chibur l'tumah and lahazor. Hamal ben shel mitis. Hamal ben shel mitis apparently is like certain poles that you put on top of a bed in order to hang things on those poles, but they have nothing to do with the bed. Whereas eventually, probably you take off those poles and you put it somewhere else. But while you could put the poles there and hang things on it. So that this hamal ben shel mites in the chibur le'latuma v'la'azor has nothing to do with the bed, and therefore there's not a chibur not latuma v'la'azor. Halacha Yud Beis Kol Yodis HaKelim HaKeduches. So if you have a keli, if you have some type of an instrument, and it has a wooden handle. Now, if that wooden handle has a hole in it, kigei natzev asakin, like the handle of a knife, or kiyetzebei, shahanatzev nokuf, so this handle has a hole in it, v'habarzel nichnas bei, and the metal, there's something, the knife is, the metal knife is sticking into the handle. So then, since there's a hole in the handle, so that metal instrument, or the knife over here, that's going into the hole, we assume that it's going to stay there. And since it's going to stay there, so therefore it's considered chibur l'tumah v'la'azor, it's more of a permanent connection. Aval hayodis hacharukis, you have handles that have something sticking out of it, and that's the way it holds the instrument. Kigoin eitz hachanis, sho'es nichnas bebarzel, a chanis is some type of a weapon. It's like maybe a spear, something similar to a spear, that the handle goes into that chanis, so then that's easier to pull out the handle, and you pull out the handle, and it's less of a permanent connection, so therefore, ein chibur la'azor, it's not considered a chibur la'azor. Now, advice to is be a chibur l'tumah, it's a chibur l'tumah, but ein chibur la'azor.